Ora bem, a tem a ver com as boards da Asrock. Sabem, eu tenho uma board da Asrock e com os processadores da AMD, é óbvio, que podiam ser de Intel, mas vamos falar dos processadores da AMD que chegaram a queimar nas boards da Asrock. Por incrível que pareça, parece que só nas boards da Asrock é que isso aconteceu. Portanto, significa então que é um problema da Asrock e não do processador, teoricamente, ok? Inicialmente a ASRock negava que havia problemas com as boards deles, como sempre, todos os fabricantes é sempre a mesma palhaçada, ok? Portanto, e como sabe, eu tenho uma ASRock, mas eu já sei o que é que a casa gasta, não é? Até que um youtuber mais conhecido começou a tentar pegar as coisas com calma. E o que começou a pedir que as pessoas que tivessem esses problemas lhe mandassem os processadores e as boards que ele comprava e até dava um bónus. Ele costuma fazer sempre isso, que é o Gamers Nexus. Para além disso, Tech City, aliás, o nome dele é Tech City, como toda a gente conhece, eu já mostrei aqui também um vídeo. Esteve agora ultimamente em Taipei com os representantes da ASRock e o Gamers Nexus também esteve, e esse vídeo que vamos ver. Mas no Tech City tem aqui uma coisa engraçada, vamos mostrar aqui o vídeo. Deixem-me pôr aqui o meu cãozinho, não sei porque é que eu desliguei aqui o meu cãozinho. E então eles disseram, ou seja, desmentiram, a ASRock desmentiu. Porquê? Primeiro que não havia nada com as boards, não é? Depois disseram que pode ser uma questão do sock voltage, pode ser, pode não ser, mas pode ter mais a ver com as memórias. Sempre a mesma coisa, é sempre a culpa dos outros, não é? Sempre a culpa dos outros. Depois, um, ah, vamos alterar as BIOS. Deixem-me pôr agora aqui, deixem-me alterar a BIOS, já está aqui o meu cãozinho. Deixem-me alterar as BIOS e que já estão. Eles lançaram até duas BIOS diferentes, ok? 320 e agora a última que foi 325, ok? 325. Só que eles, então foi assim, como está aqui o artigo, a ASRock inicialmente negou que eram as boards que estavam a dar estes problemas. Depois que o sock voltage não era a causador do problema, mas memória, incompatibilidade da memória. Incompatibilidade da memória não pode queimar processadores. Amor de Deus. Eu não percebo como é que tentaram escapar com isto. E depois, depois agora dizem então, não, afinal é o PBO que tem um problema qualquer. Eu até tenho o meu PBO bem estocado. Atenção, o meu processador é apenas o 7600. E os problemas estão a acontecer mais no 9000, ok? Inclusivamente no X3D, ok? Porque eu para mim acho que esses processadores têm mais problema de voltagens, por causa da memória. Enfim, digo eu, assim como quem não quer coisa. Depois diz então que o problema tinha a ver com o EDC e o TDC, que é um problema de desenho. Então, mas então isso acontecia em todas as boards, meus filhinhos da Rock. E isso estava a acontecer só nas vossas. E mais, isto principalmente estava a acontecer nas boards de gama média alta. Ou seja, na minha board que é gama baixa, não deveria acontecer. Porquê? Será que nas boards mais baixas as BIOS vêm condicionadas a não vamos deixar que ele ponha muita voltagem nos processadores? Ok? Sabem que isso pode acontecer. Agora, estes gajos admitirem isso publicamente é que zero. Ok? Depois diz aqui, Asrock disse a ele, ou Tech City, these settings to do what they believe as too aggressive for what the CPUs are able to handle, ou seja, era muito agressiva. Não, eles seguem as regras também que a própria AMD estipula. Então eles que digam qual eram os valores que eles estavam a colocar e porque é que acontecia nas boards de gama média alta e não nas boards de entrada. Estão a ver? É o que diz aqui. They also told me that the lower boards, say for instance A620 HDV or something like that, ou seja, são mesmo de entrada, soon be affected by this simply because those PBO settings have been deliberately turned on. Pois, esse é que é o problema. Sabe o que acontece? Os fabricantes das boards gostam muito de dar boost às boards. Já acontecia isso. Eu não sei se na MSI também chegou a acontecer numa outra situação, mas costumam dar mais hipótese dos processadores se esticarem mais um bocadinho, e isso pode ser grave. E como as boards de entrada normalmente não têm, por exemplo, os VRMs com muita e os MOSFETs com muita dissipação, e eles então sabem que não devem fazer isso, né? Pronto, mas acho que isso é uma piada. Ele tem aqui o vídeo do Texas a falar sobre isso. Não esquecer que, e vamos falar aqui do vídeo dele, do Gamers Nexus. Eu já falei aqui, estão a ver aqui o meu vídeo. Este para mim é o grande problema, porque o Texas conseguiu provar isso, ou seja, mostrou que deixa-me tirar o som, nas boards da Asrock, os valores que íamos estar aqui eram sempre mais altos do que nas outras marcas. Ok? Acontece é que portanto, este vídeo está no site dele, vocês podem ver, é muito recente, ok? Só que eu já tenho esta board falada há 11 meses atrás, ok? Eu há 11 meses atrás mostrei que aquela opção tem que estar colocada de outra maneira, ok? Está alguns cá para dentro, já não sei agora o que é, mas vocês podem ver o vídeo foi gravado com o telemóvel no meu sistema, porque eu não tenho placa de captura para fazer isto, mas está aqui alguns. Tem aqui também o meu PBO, como é que está colocado. Inclusive agora que vem para o verão, se calhar até vou baixar aqui para 80 graus, porque o PC fica sempre muito quente agora no verão, mas isso é sempre assim. Eu não quero dar mais boost à minha refrigeração para não fazer muito barulho. Sabem que eu gosto muito mais de computador mais sossegado. Mas eu há 11 meses atrás já tinha dito que aquela opção ali, ok? Esta opção aqui não pode estar assim. Há 11 meses atrás. Tenho uma board de entrada, tenho um processador de entrada e eu já sabia disso. Eu não sou nenhum engenheiro, nem nenhum visionário. Só que já trabalho há muitos anos com computadores e overclockings. Nunca mais me esqueço os overclockings que nós fazíamos aos Xirix. Mas enfim, isso é outra história. Há mesmo de vocês que nem sequer eram nascidos quando a gente já fazia isso. Mas pronto, eu já fazia isso. Como veem aqui, temos aqui a 325. Esta é a última BIOS que vocês devem fazer update às vossas boards, okay? Da série AM5 da Asrock, que supostamente vêm tonificadas para o PBO. Para mim é tanga. E o Gamers Nexus no fim vai falar. Agora vamos ver o que é que o Gamers Nexus passou para conseguir um encontro com eles. Para vocês terem uma noção, ele combinou com a Asrock. Aliás, a Asrock deu-lhes uma data para eles estarem lá no evento, que a Asrock sabia que ele não sequer podia entrar. Só que o Gamers Nexus anda muito à frente. O Gamers Nexus conseguiu, entre aspas, falar com alguém que tinha esse passe e ele conseguiu entrar. Porque senão, o que é que acontecia? Como ele só podia entrar mais tarde, que era jornalista, não, entre aspas, a Asrock dizia, não, nós estivemos lá marcados àquela hora, você que não apareceu. Houve um ponto em que isto está, ok? Mas vamos ver aqui. Asrock, e atenção, ele queria falar com alguém responsável, como ele fez com a Asus, por exemplo, mas tentaram-lhe implantar-se para gravação, foi relações públicas. Asrock, isso é mau. É mau, ok? Vamos então aqui ver o que é que o nosso amigo tem tido.
Motherboard failures and 9800 X3D issues specifically over the last several months. So we stopped by.
Como já sabem, os problemas foi mais vocacionados com o 9800 X3D, ok? Mas pode acontecer a todos, porque se ela tem um sistema que não está a ser bem controlado, pode acontecer aos outros. Então ver aqui ele vai tentar então mostrar e a maneira que conseguiu fazer, sem estar em pé.
To ask about the motherboards. They said to come back today. They would not tell us anything, so we're coming back today.
E bem, eles pensavam que eles não iam. Eles não conhecem. Vai passar por vários gajos para tentar chegar.
Good to meet you.
Once again, how you doing? Like,
Good. We are recording.
Não querem ser filmados
We're not
a
live.
dar a explicação, só que ele disse, não, tem que ser.
Steve,
Tem que ser
do
gravado.
you have time to talk about what's going on with the motherboards and X3D?
yes.
Can we film it? Can we talk on camera?
Can we talk first?
Primeiro vamos falar
As long
primeiro.
as I
Estão a
can
ver?
put it on record.
Okay, cool.
Okay, sure. Yeah, lead the way.
Because invite.
Isso é mau.
Yeah.
Isto é mau.
Hey,
Ok.
good to meet you. I'm Steve.
Com um gabinete separado, escondidinho, não é?
In the time since our last update on the situation, we've seen continual posts from the community about more failures. It really hasn't stopped. Asrock posted an update back in March on the 25th that we found to be unclear, misleading, and of zero value. Asrock's update stated, quote, a retrieved motherboard was in a system where the CPU showed burn damage. When inspecting this motherboard, we...
Parem. 25 de março de 2025. Que eles próprios já, depois de muita pressão, responderam. Como eu digo outra vez, há 11 meses que eu tinha as minhas coisas corretas.
found that the motherboard does not have obvious damage nor burn marks around the VRM area. Measurements of the motherboard are also within spec. After cleaning and removing debris from the socket without further repair, the motherboard can boot up successfully with original onboard BIOS. It also passed long-term stress tests. The release of BIOS 3.20 is not related to the CPU damage issue. All BIOS versions, including earlier iterations, will not cause CPU damage, end quote. In the time between that post and now, Asrock pulled BIOS version 3.20 on several of its pages. While we were at Computex, the company released a new BIOS called 3.25. The downside of releasing a major BIOS like this during a trade show is that we didn't have access to our lab to validate Asrock's claims that 3.25 fixes the problem, as we were already in Taiwan. As for that blog post back in March, we think it was written in an intentionally misleading way. It effectively read like, after the thorough cleaning of the socket, everything was good. And we really don't think it's that simple. More accurately, removing the melted pad pieces from the socket, which was partially caused by the socket in some capacity, that allowed the board to continue functioning. But Asrock had a disconnect between that part of it and the cleaning part of it. If those melted pads were caused by Asrock's BIOS, then that's the core of the issue that's left out here. The bottom line for Asrock is that it's had these failures mounting for months now, and it's had really terrible communication with its customers, like exceptionally bad, basically none at all.
Mas isso não é nada de estranho. As marcas não querem nos responder aos
And due to
consumidores.
Asrock's inability to sufficiently explain why CPUs are failing on its motherboards at a higher rate than other vendors, there'll be an impact on motherboard purchasing decisions. And there should be, because as a customer, you shouldn't really be buying motherboards from a company that can't communicate with its customers. This causes long-term problems and support issues. So, we decided to stop by Asrock's booth on Thursday, the second to last day of Computex,
E agora vai explicar.
about the motherboard issues. And this was unannounced. We showed up. I'm going to be honest, they were a little bit panicked. But we did ask if we could talk to somebody about the motherboard issues, and they instantly turned us away.
Inicialmente recusaram, vejam,
They said, maybe tomorrow. I said, what time tomorrow? They said 9 a.m.
é amanhã, que é para estudarem. Olha, para fazerem estudo, mas depois lá está. Venham cá amanhã às 9.
Computex is not open at 9 a.m. for the press, only for
Ou seja, a Computex não abre às 9 para a empresa.
exhibitors. It opens for
Apenas para
us
os expositores.
at 10 a.m. And
Só abrem para eles às
I
10.
asked about other times. 9 a.m. was the best time. So we went over to another
Claro.
booth. I asked those exhibitors if I could borrow their exhibitor badges.
Cá está.
And they said yes. So we borrowed some exhibitor badges and we moseyed on in.
Eles
to
entraram
Asrock's
como
booth at 9 a.m.
expositores,
as
vejam.
requested. We brought you this video.
Veja, isto eu vou passar à frente porque isto é publicidade, eu não queria perder muito tempo. Isto para mim ainda é mais grave aquilo que eles tentaram fazer. Ok? Aliás, neste vídeo ele devia ter esparrado na cara deste gajo isso. Estes fabricantes não podem ser deixados passar com estas coisas. Apesar de ele ter colocado isto no vídeo, mas era assim que devia fazer. Olha, desculpe. Porque é que vocês marcaram às 9 se vocês sabiam que às 9 não podia ser? A desculpa dele seria não sabíamos disso. É sempre assim, né? Veja, este gajo é responsável pelas boards, mas é o VP. Que é o Relações Públicas.
We've been talking about the motherboard and the X3D issues online, so this video is going to be very simple. I'm just trying to get as much information as ASRock has to share. I'm sure you all have seen some of the posts on Reddit, especially about motherboard failures. A lot of it relates to X3D. We did some initial research. We didn't come to conclusions yet, so we're at Computex, and I stopped by totally unplanned and said, "Can we talk about motherboards?" So, Chris, you, what's your role at ASRock?
I am in charge of running the motherboard business at ASRock.
Okay,
Yeah.
VP, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so VP of motherboard. So, I mean, first question really is just, does ASRock know what's been going on at this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
First of all,
Yeah.
of course, thanks, Steve.
Sure.
You guys come to. I appreciate you guys come to our booth. Let us have a chance to to talk to our customers, users. All right. Of course, we realized that there are some cases it was reported on the forum.
Eles dizem que sabem, mas pelo menos diziam que não. Não é nada com eles.
We're aware of that, and what we found is okay. Let's divide into. It's a little bit complex.
Okay.
So let's divide
É,
into 3
é
parts.
muito
Right?
complexo.
First
claro.
one's some cases, but it's a small percentage. It's like user's damage. Some thermal paste, put it on the, we found that some thermal paste on the socket, so it's costly, it's no good issue.
Okay.
E se não queremos saber, isso da montagem errada que as pessoas fizeram não tem nada a ver com o problema. Ok? Não tem nada a ver com o problema.
Let's say user's case, right?
Yeah, of course, a lot of them are not user
Exactly,
damage.
yeah.
So what are the not user
Yeah,
issues?
yeah. And second part is we found some cases report, looks like my CPU's died. They sent back the CPU to the motherboards, and we also sent back the CPU to the AMD. And after test, a lot of cases the CPU is still working.
Okay.
So it looks like to us, after that we investigate and we found that it's kind of like memory compatibility issues.
Okay.
So we released a BIOS 3.20. I think like 1 month ago.
Yeah.
Já usei esta há muito
That
tempo.
can fix this memory compatibility issues.
Okay.
Okay. So after that, some cases also fixed. So
Yeah.
I'm closed, right?
Right. There's still new ones popping up though after
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Yeah.
So what else is there?
And the last part is we found that the CPU is really defective.
Okay.
Okay. There's no burn mark
O
on.
CPU está com defeito. Está a explicar das coisas que
Was that an
aconteceram.
AMD issue? AMD CPU
No,
issue?
we're not saying AMD issue. We found that it should relate.
Pode dizer que o problema é do processador, porque as outras marcas não têm esses problemas.
The precision.
Isto é que é difícil de
And
admitir.
more technically, we adjust some settings. I mean, major 2 settings in that PBO.
Okay.
One is a thermal design current,
Yeah.
stands,
TDC. Yeah.
TDC.
TDC stands for electric design current. We found that our original value of these 2 bars may be a bit higher.
Okay.
So now with our new BIOS 3.25, we lower the PBO settings with these 2 values, and we believe it can solve the problem.
What about for people who have failures that don't have PBO on? Like, are there
E há
any
pessoas que tiveram estes problemas sem o PBO. É aí que eles apertam.
About an adaptive like VSOC. So has ASRock looked into that at all?
Yes, but we think that VSOC has nothing to do with this problem. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other issues you think that there are BIOS settings related to the failures for users who
No,
don't
we believe that so in this BIOS we refine these PBO settings and we believe it can solve the issues.
Okay.
So now these BIOS are already available to download on the website. So if you have the BIOS if you have the motherboards on hand, you can update this BIOS through the BIOS flashback or through the normal BIOS update process. And then we also deploy this new BIOS into our, let's say, factory mass production. So all the boards from the factories, new boards, coming with a new BIOS, should be no issue.
Olha que vantagem. Claro que tem que vir com as mais recentes. Lógica.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is the current recommendation for anyone on an ASRock board for this generation? Are you guys recommending to update to 3.25?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
É que eu já
That should already be available, I guess, for all AM5 boards, ASRock boards.
Yes.
Okay. All right, and then what about if there's for people who have had failures? What is the warranty commitment from you guys?
Okay. Until today, we found that some CPU really defective, and also it covered this things. So just through the normal RMA process, send the CPU back to AMD.
Pelos bichos,
Okay.
uma das coisas boas que eles fazem é o envio será da conta deles. Não sei como é que se processa isso.
Yeah.
Motherboard's still working, so motherboard is good.
Meaning if you change the CPU to a different CPU, the board works?
It still works. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
If the user had some failures, like so I've seen some reports of shutdowns, but hasn't completely stopped working yet. Is there any reason people should be worried about like damage to the CPU?
No, I believe not. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the warranty process, so if someone has an issue with an ASRock board and they send it in under warranty, is ASRock paying for the shipping both ways?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. The rollout for the BIOS, so that's
que era o mínimo.
mass production, that's for all boards going forward, all new
Yes.
boards?
Yes.
How about the value? So TDC and EDC, do you happen to know what the change was to the values?
Basically, we lower that values,
Yeah.
but it depends on the VRM design on
Okay.
different boards. So each board needs to set different values. So I cannot say, oh,
Sure.
just set this value. Or, yeah.
Do you happen to know any off the top of your head for any one particular board? Like how big? I'm basically looking for like how big was the change?
Oh yeah. Sorry, I don't have that number in my mind.
Got it. Okay. So I think the questions people are going to have are just going to be for anyone who's experienced a failure or what they think is a failure, but they don't have PBO on. And it sounds like you guys don't think there's any motherboard issue for that type of situation, because what you've given is basically a PBO thing, right?
Yeah.
Or I guess memory compatibility was the other claim.
Yeah.
But you don't think there's any other underlying issue?
Yes. Until now, we believe it's these two issues.
What about
não sabem
some
ainda
of the photos
sequer.
I've seen have had pins that have had like lightly scorched, burned pads.
Yeah.
After coming out of the ASRock board. So
For that CPU, you mean the CPU with the burn mark, right?
Some of them, yeah.
Yeah.
It's more than one.
We have sent that CPU back to the AMD, but we're still waiting for the analyzed result.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think this is a problem that other motherboard vendors are experiencing also?
Sorry,
I know you don't work for them, but
exactly.
I'm just
Also, I cannot comment on
okay,
that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So then, in terms of like action items or commitments, I guess. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. The recommendation from ASRock is to update to 3.25. If you buy a new board, don't assume it has 3.25 on it because it might have been at the retailer already even before the change. If there's a defect, then ASRock will pay for shipping both ways, and I guess either swap the board if it's broken or if there's a CPU issue. I mean, are you replacing the CPUs, or you send it back to the customer and tell them to go to AMD, or how does that work if they send it in and the CPU is the problem?
Se tiveres o CPU, vais ter que para
We
AMD.
don't sell the motherboards,
Yeah.
right? So CPU, if they buy from, let's say, any retailers, they just send it back and say CPU is defective.
So then you would send it back to them.
Yeah.
And then they go through AMD, I guess, to warranty the CPU or the retailer.
If that happens.
Okay, got it. Is there anything else on this issue? I mean, anything you want to talk about or say to the community? Because I think one of the frustrations for people was that ASRock has been very quiet about all this. So, I mean, can you just address the customer base? Anything further you want to add to the situation?
No, because just like I said in the beginning, it's like a complex issues. So we need to really dig out and figure out what's the real problem is. So it might take some time. So I'm really sorry about that. But our R&D team is really working hard on it. So case by case, see what's the memory compatibility issues, what is the PBO settings issues. So it takes some time.
Okay. Last one is ASRock doing anything, or have you made any internal changes for the future to try and prevent this from
Claro que
happening?
não.
Any process changes that you've
É
made?
falar mais com os
Issues like this from
clientes.
happening in the future?
A resposta bocado básica.
That maybe there's nothing special process. But what we say is we need to let's say when problem happens, we may need to get more information quickly, and then we can analyze the problem, how to figure out what the solution is. I think that's the thing that we need to improve in the next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I can add one for you,
Yeah.
I think earlier communication with the customers would be great.
Okay.
Even if it's just like, hey, we're not sure either, we're trying to
Mas
figure it
isso,
out.
as marcas, é
That,
tudo
it
a
helps
mesma
people know that, okay,
palhaçada.
they're at least paying attention.
Então o próprio fórum da ASRock
It gets kind of crazy if
é uma
everyone's
vergonha.
panicking about
Uma
seeing
vergonha.
photos on
Coisa lá
Reddit. It's
dentro,
like
né?
the 12 high power issue when it was new, right?
Okay.
Like everyone's seeing these failures, they're worried about their board, and just putting something out there like, hey, we're aware of it, we're looking into it.
Mas a AMD, por exemplo, ainda tem um novo
Like
Odysee.
that.
Agree
That's
with
my
you,
feedback.
I agree with you. But okay,
Quer dizer, um novo Odysee.
we don't want to keep the wrong
Odysee é
information
do
to
mês.
I know, and that's why I
But
think it's
I
okay.
totally
Início
agree
deste
with you.
mês.
We need to
Não, do mês passado.
we need to give a user an update or something like
I think
that,
there's a middle step right between guessing and being wrong and just saying we don't know yet, we're looking into it, because at least then it's like, okay, they're aware, right?
Cool.
So anyway, okay, that's the update then.
Só que
Thank you.
o Gamers Next vai deixar aviso muito
And we will see you all
importante.
next time. All right, so now that we're back in the studio, that's a
Okay.
difficult environment to try and fact check
Okay.
things for something that was updated during the show. And we didn't have access to the motherboards or the test benches to try and validate the claims. So we're
Eles ainda não conseguiram fazer os
Back here
testes, mas o TechSitio já fez testes e teve pior performance. Ele diz que vai continuar a ver isso. Significa que o PBO agora não está a dar tanto boost. É certeza absoluta.
we're not fully convinced that what was discussed will fix the problem. The fix that was mentioned was very focused on PBO. And we know for a fact from
E eles continuam a dizer que não é esse o problema, porque havia gente que não tinha o PBO e teve os CPUs queimados, ou os boards também queimadas. Portanto, o problema não pode estar ali. Ok? O problema tem que estar naquela situação daquele SOC que, como o Texito mostrou, nos outros fabricantes era inferior e no da AMD não, ok? E nas outras marcas não queimaram.
Talking with users who have had failures and reading posts on Reddit and elsewhere where the failures have been discussed, that PBO is not always on in instances of the failures, which is why I asked in the interview, well, what about everyone else? And the answer was basically, no, that should pretty much fix it. So we're not convinced about that. And we're going to wait at this point another week or two, because now that BIOS is out there, we should start seeing reports coming back pretty quickly if there are continual failures, and then can narrow in further on what those are. Now, this is our first serious encounter with ASRock, since it seems like they blacklisted us years and years ago when we produced a VRM and motherboard review.
So we
haven't worked with ASRock a whole
confront.
lot. People have changed in that time in terms of the staff at the company, and we'll give them credit for taking the meeting. And realistically, meetings should be like this. Now, we didn't get all the information I wanted to get, and I do think there's more to it, but at least they took the meeting. We only need to go full Acers when there's enough evidence of trying to cover things up and refusing to acknowledge.
Eu acho que o caso ainda
There's
não
always a chance
acabou.
of that. But for now, ASRock's VP does get credit for going on camera with no notice and taking the responsibility of the meeting, even though he had other people he could have put in front of him there. At this time, we've at least gotten something on record from ASRock. They've spoken about the issue. Now we have something we can validate against. At this stage, what we need is to see what reports emerge from users who are using version 3.25.
Eu já estou com o meu. Eu sinceramente não estou a gostar da 3.25 da estabilidade da RAM, mas eu acho que já me lembrei do que era.
But not discussed.
Já falei aqui até no vídeo sobre isso.
A TDC and EDC BIOS issue with PBO. I would fully believe that is part of the problem, so we're not dismissing that. I think there's more to it, though. And because some of the failures have these sort of cosmetic, weird scorch marks on the pads that can be wiped off and then resolved, which really would only track if it's something else burning, like debris, we do wonder if there's a manufacturing issue. And we also bought another user's motherboard and CPU, and we did some troubleshooting locally for part of our RMA rescue program. You can
Estão até a desconfiar que no fabrico das boards pudessem vir resíduos, uma questão de defeito de fabrico, não é? Que não foi controlado na questão de qualidade, porque havia processadores que apareceram com resíduos estranhos, sem ser da pasta térmica, não é? Enfim.
Rescue at gamersnexus.net if you have a failed component you'd like to sell to us. Tannen worked on this while I was in Taiwan. So on a quick inspection, we noticed that the CPU had discolored pads on A7 through A11, B6 through B8, C7 and C8, and BB8. Looking into these using WikiChip, they appear to correspond with display panel power enable, VSS ground, USB-C2 RX2N, or the USB port 2 USB-C receive differential pairs, or DP transmitter lane 0, according to WikiChip, DP0BL on, or the display panel backlight enable, and SLP_S3S5_L, which is a sleep state power plane control signal for the VRM. We were unable to find any noticeable signs of failure on the CPU aside from slightly discolored pins and pads, meaning we didn't see anything that looked like it might have exploded internally like we've seen in the past with the 7800 X3Ds and Days. We might send it to an FA lab if these issues continue to pop up. Now, what's interesting, again, is that a lot of the failures we've seen so far have not involved PBO, and that wouldn't track with what ASRock is saying. So ASRock says some of it is customer issues. Fully believe that. We've seen one of them. We bought one. It had crushed pins. Another one, ASRock said, is related to memory compatibility. Completely believe that as well. The third one, being TDC and EDC and PBO, that's also believable. But we think there's at least one more, which is probably the one that's screwing the most people. And we don't know for fact what that is yet. But looking at this CPU, it gives us some potential pointers where that may be. And then, of course, there's the theory on potential socket debris as well from manufacturing. So at this stage, we don't fully accept that the issue is resolved. ASRock seems to think it is, based on what we've seen online and reports we've seen. There's just not enough evidence for us to think that would be true. It may be partly resolved, but we don't think it fully is. Now, if it's fully resolved, awesome. We'll know basically immediately because everyone will talk about how everything's working now, and there won't be any more reports of failure. But in the last few days, we've already seen reports of failure. So we'll continue following this. This is not our primary investigation right now. So we have a lot of things we're working on. We are looking into several, I can't really talk about them yet. The one that's publicly known is the media situation. It is on our radar. I have regularly been working with Tannen to continue following the story and researching it. So please email us if you have leads.
Pronto, já sabem, se vocês tiverem problemas, que muita gente teve, tiverem os vossos processadores até queimados e isso, falem com eles, porque ele tem comprado esses processadores até com o valor mais alto, e a malta ainda pode ganhar uns trocos à conta disso, ok? E ele já não é a primeira vez que faz, já fez na altura com a questão da ASUS, também comprou, como foi as placas gráficas também comprou, portanto, pá, sigam isso. Vamos ver, como eu disse, há 11 meses atrás eu já tinha mostrado o meu, já tinha configurado o meu. É claro que o meu é só de 6 núcleos e 57900 X3D. Estamos a falar de um processador com a questão do cache. Mas para mim a desculpa que eles deram para mim é surreal. Ok? Mas pronto, vamos ver.